everybody, and welcome back to the Girly Girl Bookworm. So today I have my end of December wrap up for you. I've got quite a few books to talk about, so we're just going to dive right in. So as usual, I have a bunch of physical books and audiobooks and Kindle books to talk about. The end of December got a bit chaotic in terms of I hit a slow point, but then I hit a let's just go mode. So my stuff is a little bit all over the place. But let's, get started. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Survivors by Jane Harper. I decided I needed an audiobook and I needed one that I definitely owned and that I already had and I didn't have to wait for it. And I remembered that I had a Libro FM advanced listener copy of this book. So I decided I might as well go with this one. So I really liked The Dry when I read it, I think last year, and then this year I read Force of Nature and it was okay, and this one again was just okay. So I have a feeling that Jane Harper is just not the author for me. In this book we're following this couple and I think they're coming back to their hometown. I can't remember if they're visiting or moving. I think they're moving back. And when they left, there was this big issue, and his past kind of comes back to haunt him when there is a dead body that is found on the beach. Now, I will say, I feel like my synopsis is really bad about this book because it was so forgettable. I didn't really enjoy the narrator. I felt like we were just kind of thrown into the story without a whole ton of background knowledge. So it just left me at points very confused and just not caring. So I never really connected to the characters. I never cared about any of them. So at the end of the day, it was kind of forgettable, and I gave it 3 stars, and I think I'm going to put myself on hold with Jane Harper for the next little bit. I don't know why my hair looks really short today in this camera finder. I did try to read All the Beautiful Lies by Peter Swanson because this was the only book that I had left from him on my shelf to read. There's still one more book that he's published that I haven't read, but I don't own it. But I was like, well, why don't I try to catch up on this? Maybe I could do another author spotlight, which I probably still plan to do. But this one I ended up DNFing. I got it, the Kindle copy through my library, and I was reading it, and I was okay with it for a while. We're following a guy who just graduates college, and right before his graduation, he gets the call that his father has passed away and that he fell off a cliff. So he goes up there to his stepmom, and it's weird because his dad walked this cliff every day, so he doesn't understand why he would fall off, so he thinks that there's something more sinister happening. We're also following a past perspective, but there was this one scene that was it just crossed the line that I just was not in the mood to deal with. There was I wouldn't call it incestual, but it was a stepdad with a daughter, and it rubbed me the wrong way, so I ended up DNFing it because it wasn't what I wanted, and yeah. Then, after that, though, complete shift of gears, I ended up reading The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox, and it did take me a while to get through this just because I was reading it physically, and you know me with physical books lately, it hasn't necessarily been happening, so I picked this one up, and I kind of picked it up at random, and it was by far my favorite holiday read of the year. I gave this one 5 stars. I'm so glad that I put it as an honorable mention in my book of the month, top books of the year, because it ended up being 5 stars. We're following kind of this Parent Trap meets baking meets Food Network type of thing, and I ate it up. I loved it. So we're following 2 sisters, and one sister is a host on this baking show in California, and her other sister is a baker as well, helping to run her family business. And the sister in California ends up getting hit in the head, and she ends up getting concussed, and she can't taste, she can't smell, and the bad thing is, at the end of this season of the show she's filming, they're taking a different direction with the show that they're going to produce, and it's only going to have one host, so she's kind of up with a rivalry with this other guy that's the other guy host. So she's I can't let him win. So she decides to switch places with her sister. She decides she's going to go run her family bakery while her sister comes and pretends to be her, and they both have their own love connections, and it just was the sticky sweet read that I needed this holiday season, and I 100% loved it, and I hope that this author duo comes out with something else because this was so good. Then I listened to As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the third and final book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series, and I wish it didn't exist. This was not good, guys. Like, I had heard phenomenal things about the first two audiobooks, so I decided I would listen to this one on audio, and I've heard that this audio is kind of a letdown compared to the other one, so I was like, of course, the one that I choose to listen to on audio. Of course. So I just did not love the direction that this one went into. We take place right after book 2 ends, so I'm not going to spoil it too much, but Pip, as we've known her, has been such a strong, confident girl, and to watch her she kind of crumbles in this one and takes a complete 180 in her mental health, which is fine. Mental health happens, but it felt so uncharacteristically her, and then this mystery it didn't do it for me. I wasn't a fan. I ended up giving it 3 stars, which makes me sad. Like, I wish I just kind of stopped after book 2. Book 1 was phenomenal. It's my favorite, and the series just kind of went down the hill from there. Then after that, I read Screwed Up by Harlow Ray. I'm so used to holding my book on this side because normally I leave this as most of my white space. It's weird to be holding it up here. This is the second book in the Bayside Hero series. This is a companion series that each book was written by a different author. The first book was Washed Up by Candy Steiner, and then a week later they released Screwed Up. And we are following all these heroes in this town in Tampa. That's not what I meant to say. In Tampa, it follows a whole bunch of different heroes. The first one we were following an anesthesiologist. This one we are following a security officer and a psychologist that works in the hospital, and they're brooding friends with benefits to lovers, like romance. It's definitely like a brute romance where Dane is more beastly. Like, they literally nickname him Beast, and her nickname is Belle. So, like, they play on that, like, Beauty and the Beast telling. But I will say I really enjoyed this one. They start off as a friends with benefits situation. They switch over to a romance. My only issue, which is why I gave this one 4 stars, was the fact that Dane is very crude for absolutely no reason. He is, like, right off the bat with her, like, sexual harassment style vulgarity, which just was very weird for me. I'm like, you literally work in a company to get there. Like, you can't talk to people like that. So that was the only thing that bothered me, but I think that was just a personality style thing. So I still gave it 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it. Couldn't wait to continue with the series, and I probably will try Harlow Ray again. I just worry that all of her male characters are brutes like that, but I'm hoping that she has some other romances that are not like that. So if you've read Harlow Ray, let me know down below. After that, I listened to White Christmas Wedding by Celeste Winters. This one was a really short, quick audiobook. I decided that I wanted to consume it that way because it was available on Hoopla, so why not? I bought this one last year randomly at Target, and I wish I kind of didn't, because it was just kind of a random 3-star, it was okay kind of story. We're following a girl who is getting married, and then her best friend is kind of coming into town to, like, plan her wedding, and there's some, like, drama obviously that goes into with it, which normally, you know me with weddings. I love weddings, but this just didn't feel magical. I didn't connect to the characters. I feel like sometimes when books are like this short, it just doesn't leave you enough time to really get to know anybody or really get to know anything. So it was okay. Again, kind of forgettable. So 3 stars. After that, I read Fired Up by KK Allen. This is the 3rd book in the Bayside Hero series. So a week after the other one came out, this one came out. So this is the cool thing about this series, was every week a new one came out, which was super fun. And I didn't think I was going to be able to keep up, but I did. So this is the 3rd book. This follows Asher, and Asher is a firefighter, and his relationship with this single parent who has kind of moved back into town. And they have this romance, and it was so swoon-worthy. I gave it 5 stars. I think I do really ultimately like that single parent vibe, and Asher was just like the perfect personality to like go into a relationship with somebody who already had a child. And it was just really sweet, and it took that step back where we weren't really dealing with the vulgarness like we were with Dane. So that was very nice. And this book kind of took points where it looked like it was going to go into a direction where I was like, oh, this is going to end up becoming Dr. Star, because I just don't want that to happen. And it actually didn't go in the directions that I thought it was going to. So I was pleasantly pleased, and I ended up giving this one 5 stars. And definitely KK Allen is now on my radar as somebody that I would like to try again. After that, I listened to Hercule Poirot's Christmas. I don't own this one. It's one that I always say that I'm going to buy, and then I never do. And then I found it for instant download on Hoopla, so I was like, okay, sign me up. So I listened to it, and this is following a very wealthy man, and he brings back his sons for the holidays, and he has them come over for Christmas, and he ends up getting murdered, so why not? So then Hercule Poirot comes to solve the mystery and save the day. And I found this one to be just okay. Again, I gave this one 3 stars. I think, again, it was a short story. Hercule Poirot doesn't come into it for a good portion of the book. There's a lot of build-up before he comes into town. And all of the characters, because they were family members, made it kind of difficult to follow because their names were all very similar. I'm trying to think of what their name was, because their name kept coming up, and I kept like singing a jingle every time I heard the name. I can't say it now, but like it was just it was okay, and there really was nothing holiday about it besides the fact that you knew that it took place on Christmas Eve and that somebody died on Christmas Eve. That was the only thing Christmassy about it. So it was okay. Not my favorite. I think that she definitely has written others that are definitely my favorites. So this one was just, can't win them all. Then I read Western Waves by Brittany C. Cherry. This one just came out in December. I read this one on Kindle Unlimited. I don't know why I don't own Brittany C. Cherry books. For some reason, I like really stick to reading her books on Kindle Unlimited. But I read book 1 and book 2, which were Southern Storms and Eastern Lights, back in February/March-ish time. I can't remember if I think I read them both in February. And so it's been a long waiting for the 3rd book to come out, and I really enjoyed this one. This one is a kind of forced marriage where this woman's like father figure passes away, and so she goes to his will reading, obviously, and there's this other man there who is completely stubborn and brutish in a different way. He's not as rude and crude as the other guy, but he's just very like negative. And so she meets him, and it turns out that he is the son of this guy that was her father figure, but he grew up in foster care and like didn't know his parents. And part of the will is that they will get all of the money if they get married for 6 months and stay together in this house. If not, he has to choose one of his dad's like ex-wives to give the money to. So they decide to get married and try it out. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It was really complicated because it's very emotional and it can be extremely triggering. There's a lot of manipulation going on. And like I said, like with lately, if you've watched any of my videos, anything that involves manipulation and things like that have really been triggering for me lately. So it was kind of like, okay, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. And my therapist told me I'd be hyper, vigilant now that I know. So like I feel like I'm hyper aware and hypersensitive to it. So it just kind of made me really uncomfortable to watch this character go through the things that they did. So it's probably a personal preference why I gave it 4 stars, but just go into it knowing that it's emotional, it's heavy. They obviously have a romance, but they obviously have dark pasts, especially with him coming from foster care and her kind of being raised by this man who was not her father because her mother passed away. So there's a lot going on. So there's a lot of things that are going on with this one. So it's an emotional read, which is what you expect when you read a Brittany C. Cherry anyway. So 4 stars for that one. And then I read Christmas in Peachtree Bluff by Christy Woodson Harvey. I was so pleasantly pleased with this one. This is technically the 4th book in the Peachtree Bluff series. Somebody I know commented, I'm blanking on who, but they asked like, Oh, I really am so excited for that one. I'd rather just like skip the first three. I wouldn't skip the first three. This is truly a fourth book in the series. So I would definitely read the other three before you read this one. This one follows the Murphy girls, and they are all kind of coming back for the holidays. They're kind of all back for Thanksgiving, and something occurs that kind of ties them back, coming back for Christmas as well. So I really enjoyed this one. I was a little hesitant because Christy Woodson Harvey came out with another book in between these that left Peachtree, and I wasn't really a fan of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't like her anymore? And that's not the case. I think it was just I didn't like the plot of the other one. So this one was a pleasant read. I loved going back to this town. I loved seeing these characters again and where they are and how they are progressing in their life. And I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Portrait of a Thief. I'll insert a picture here. I read this one through Netgalley. Something that's been happening with this 3rd trimester, which I find very interesting, is I have crazy sleep insomnia, which I did not have when I was pregnant with Sydney. I don't know why. Baby boy wants to give me insomnia, but he does. So a lot of the Kindle reading that I've been doing has been in the middle of the night when I just can't sleep. And I just couldn't sleep. And I was in the mood for kind of a thriller. And this, I thought was a thriller. It's not a thriller. And I picked it up. And it's Portrait of a Thief. It comes out I was going to say next year, but it is 2022 already. We are following a bunch of characters who kind of get wrapped in this crew of stealing from museums to kind of steal some Asian, Chinese artwork back, because it was basically taken during wartime, and that's not fair. It should go back to China. So they kind of are like, I would kind of call them like vigilantes, like they're trying to do it for a just cause. So they get wrapped up in this situation of them trying to steal all of this art back from all these very iconic museums. And I really liked this one. I did give it 4 stars. My only downside to this book was I felt like because there were so many members of this crew, it was hard to really get to know them as individuals. I felt like the author didn't really take that time to really invest us in their backstory of why they got roped into this situation in the first place, and like what their motivations were for staying in this. And there was a couple things where there was suddenly like romance, but it just didn't feel like it was like really built in. So I would say like the plot itself was really good. I just wish there was a little bit more character development. So 4 stars. Keep your eyes out for when that one comes out. And then I read Tangled Up by Tia Louise. And this is the 4th and final book in the Bayside Hero series. So I'm so proud of myself. I read all 4 books in the series as they came out. I was super impressed with myself. I did read them all through Kindle Unlimited, which made it really easy to just read through. And this one by far was my favorite out of all of them. So I will definitely be giving Tia Louise another shot. This is one great thing about this type of series is now I'm exposed to a bunch of different indie romance authors that I hadn't read before. And now I definitely want to look into more of their books. So this one we are following a internist, which is hilarious because when I first read this and explained this to you guys, I think I called him an intern. An internist is somebody who does internal medicine and is not an intern. At one point I was like, wow, they're letting this intern do a lot of like stuff that I would never let an intern do. And then I realized it's because he's actually a doctor. He's like a real doctor, not just an intern. But he ends up in a situation where he is working on bringing somebody back, I wouldn't say to life, but like he's working on somebody who he could potentially lose. And this person kind of gives him a flashback to the past, and also it's somebody that he knows from the past. And so he kind of goes back to his hometown to really like check in on him. And at the same time, his blast from the past lover, who he's never gotten over, has also returned back to their hometown because she is a criminal psychologist, and basically at her job, she has now been threatened by somebody who was her patient who has kind of escaped. And so her boss is like, you need to get out of here. Like, I need you gone until we can recatch her. So they end up reconnecting, and it's their second chance romance, and it was so good. I think what really made this one unique too was it was not just a romance. It definitely was a romance. It felt like almost like the Notebook type of style romance, second chance, really cutesy little small town. But it also kind of had that suspense because you were waiting to see, like, is this girl going to find her? What's going to happen? And obviously with all the medical drama, there's like medical drama involved too. So it just kept you on the edge of your seat. So I really enjoyed this one. This one was by far my favorite, and I gave this one 5 stars. Then I read, surprisingly, so like I said earlier, I had been in the mood for a thriller. I felt like I had read so many just plain contemporary books, and I was like, what do I do? I need something different. And this book was nowhere near my radar at all. And it's not even a thriller. This one is a fantasy novel, which, like I said, fantasy was nowhere on my radar. And that is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. And I had been kind of thinking about this one ever since I made that video of like books that were intimidating to me. I'd been thinking about it. And then Barnes & Noble had a 50% off all hardcover sale, and I had seen the sequel, and I was tempted to buy the sequel, but I was like, you haven't even read book 1. Why the heck would you buy a sequel? So for some reason that night I came home and I was like, I'm reading it. And I did. And I really enjoyed it. This one is in 1920s Shanghai, kind of a Romeo and Juliet kind of inspired story where there are these two rival gangs, and Juliet is on one side, and did they call him Romos? Roma is on the other. And like I said, they're kind of in this rivalry anyways for the power of this territory area of China. And suddenly there is this mysterious thing that is killing a whole bunch of people. And it's alluded that it's this monster. But they both sides are kind of blaming each other. And this Roma and Juliet also have a past where you can tell that they had been lovers in the past, but they've kind of scorned each other, and now they're kind of rivals again. So it was really intriguing and really interesting. I'm surprised this book didn't give me nightmares. If you don't like bugs, don't read this book. I'm surprised it didn't give me nightmares, but I was really invested. I couldn't put it down. It's over 400 pages. So I was going to pick up book 2 right away, but I feel like I need to wait a little bit because I have a feeling that one's chunky too. So I'm going to wait, but I'm so glad that I finally got over my fear of this book, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read, I'm trying to make sure I go in order, The Sanatorium by Sarah Pierce. This one was nowhere near my radar either this month, and then suddenly I was just like, cool. Like, it has not been wintry at all in Connecticut. It's actually been really dreary, which is probably why I still wanted to reach for this one. But this one is following a couple who are going up to this hotel, which used to be a sanatorium, to celebrate her brother's engagement. Like, they haven't been close in recent years. There was a tragedy in their past that has kind of separated them. But she's going to celebrate his anniversary and his engagement. And while they're there, there's a murder that kind of takes place, and things are very sinister at this hotel. And I really liked this one. I was nervous that I wasn't going to because it had a whole ton of mixed reviews, but I did end up enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars. I will say the pacing of this one was so slow. I felt like I was reading this one forever. It did not need to be 390 pages. So as much as the writing was beautiful and the atmosphere was definitely built in, and there was a lot of mystery and there was a lot of intrigue, I just wanted the pacing to be a little bit faster. So I'm curious to see, because there's technically a book 2, which is called The Retreat, that is coming out in July, I think. I'm intrigued to see if she kind of gets faster with her pacing. But overall, I wasn't disappointed. I think going into this with a low expectation helped. So I'm glad that I picked it up. I gave it 4 stars. I also read A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This was another I couldn't sleep, so I needed to start something type of read. And I was gifted this one through one of those share your Amazon wish list things on Instagram back in the spring. And this is a Hades and Persephone retelling, but it's set in like current day where gods and goddesses are among us, and we know that they're among us. We know they exist, and we know that they're real. And we are following Persephone. She's in college, and she ends up going to Hades' nightclub. Persephone is also a goddess, but in disguise, because her mom has kind of kept her away from everybody for so long that she has kind of had to be disguised, and she ends up accidentally making a deal with Hades, which kind of sets her in his path, and it's their romance. And this is the first book out of 4, and I really liked it. It was a really quick, fast-paced read. It is truly a romance novel where it does get more than PG-13. So if you are somebody who doesn't want that type of romance, I wouldn't read this one. It's not going to be just it's not like a fantasy novel of any kind. Like, it is truly a romance series. And I gave it 4 stars, and I'm intrigued to see where the rest of the series goes. And then the last book that I finished, like 30 seconds before midnight, was The View Was Exhausting. I had started this one earlier in the month. I got about 80 pages in, and then I kind of put it off. Like I said, I think I was going through that like frou-frou, like I was reading too much like contemporary, and I just could not take this story. We are following a Hollywood starlet, and her boyfriend kind of goes off and slanders her. They break up, and he like goes crazy. And so she really needs to reinvent her image a little bit. So she recontacts one of her friends who kind of is her like pretend, like just for the media type of guy. And they go to Saint Tropez. Is that where they go? They go somewhere. They go to France. And they have this kind of like whirlwind romance for the cameras type of thing. But underneath it all, there might be something more to their relationship. I went into this expecting this to kind of be an escape. I knew it was going to be on a vacation. I knew there was going to be Hollywood drama, and it didn't do it for me. It ended up, I was expecting almost like a Jackie Collins type of story with the drama and the intrigue, and it was kind of boring. I ended up giving it 3 stars. At one point, there's like a twist in the middle that just didn't feel necessary. I didn't really like any of the characters, so it was okay. I gave it 3 stars, but it wasn't the escape that I wanted it to be. And the book that I left in 2021 unfinished, which kind of killed me, but there was no way I could finish squeezing it in. I started listening to the audiobook for Murder in Old Bombay by Neve March. I will be finishing this one in January at some point. I will say, not loving it. It's about this man who is looking into these suicides of these women who people believe weren't actually a suicide. So he's looking into it, and it's okay. Like, it's not bad. It takes place in 1892 in Bombay, and he's looking into this, and I have a feeling it's going to end up becoming a little bit forgettable because I already don't know a whole ton about it, and I'm 30% in. So I'm going to finish the audiobook, but it's not doing it for me as of right now. So this will get finished at some point in January. So yeah, those are all the books that I read at the end of December. What are some of the books that you really loved in the month of December? Let me know down below, and I will see you guys really, really soon. Bye, everybody.